Good evening and welcome. Tonight we delve into a profoundly significant and increasingly pertinent question. Is it ethical to use genetic engineering for cosmetic traits? This is a subject that touches upon our deepest concepts of self, society, and the very trajectory of human evolution in an age of unprecedented biotechnological advancement. To navigate this complex terrain, we are joined by two eminent thinkers, Professor Ben Carter, a distinguished molecular biologist and futurist who will argue in favor, and Dr. Lena Hansen, a renowned sociologist and ethicist who will present the arguments against. Our debate will proceed with opening statements from each speaker, followed by rebuttals, a moderated discussion with cross-examination, and finally, closing statements. The implications of our discussion tonight are far-reaching, and I trust this will be an illuminating exploration for us all.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes. It's a privilege to address such a crucial topic. When we speak of cosmetic genetic engineering, we're referring to the precise, intentional modification of an individual's genetic makeup to alter physical characteristics for non-medical, aesthetic reasons. This might include changing hair texture, eye color, height, or even more complex traits should the science advance sufficiently and safely. At its core, my argument rests upon the bedrock of individual autonomy and the relentless human spirit's pursuit of well-being and self-improvement through technological means. If a technology is demonstrated to be safe, and a competent adult provides informed consent for its application to their own person, on what grounds should we collectively prohibit such a choice? This is, in essence, an extension, albeit a more sophisticated one, of practices humanity has engaged in for millennia. From rudimentary cosmetics to advanced surgical procedures and orthodontics. The distinction lies in the precision, the potential permanence, and, I believe, in the long term, potentially fewer invasive interventions or side effects compared to some current methods. Consider the potential benefits. A significant boost in self-esteem for individuals who feel burdened by aspects of their appearance, the possible dissolution of social stigmas tied to certain physical traits, and the simple yet profound satisfaction derived from aligning one's physical self with one's desired self. This is not about vanity alone, it's about psychological well-being and the freedom to shape one's own life. I readily acknowledge that concerns regarding safety, access, and societal impact are valid and require meticulous consideration. However, I maintain robust confidence in our capacity to develop stringent regulatory frameworks and ethical guidelines. These frameworks can ensure responsible development and application, mitigating risks while harnessing the potential for profound individual benefit.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes and Professor Carter, for your opening remarks. While I acknowledge the allure of individual autonomy and technological progress, I believe the application of genetic engineering for purely cosmetic purposes presents profound ethical quandaries that we cannot afford to dismiss lightly. My primary contention is that cosmetic genetic engineering, far from being a simple extension of existing practices, risks exacerbating social inequalities and fundamentally altering our perception of human value and natural diversity. We must seriously consider the slippery slope argument. If we sanction genetic modifications for, say, eye color, where do we draw the line? What societal pressures will emerge, compelling individuals to conform to an ever-narrowing, genetically defined ideal of attractiveness or desirability? This technology inherently carries the risk of creating a genetic overclass, those who can afford these enhancements, and an underclass of the genetically unenhanced, thereby deepening existing socioeconomic divides in a way that is literally written into our biology. Furthermore, who defines enhancement? Whose standards of beauty or desirability will be encoded? Are we prepared for a future where certain natural human variations become stigmatized simply because they are, quote, correctable through genetic intervention? The long-term biological and social ramifications, particularly if we venture into heritable germline modifications for cosmetic traits, are largely unknown and potentially irreversible. We are contemplating alterations to the human gene pool based on fluctuating aesthetic preferences. I propose that our focus and our resources would be better directed towards addressing the underlying societal issues that foster dissatisfaction with appearance. Issues like discrimination, bullying, and media-perpetuated unrealistic beauty standards, rather than offering technological fixes that may create more problems than they solve. It's a path that I believe could devalue authentic human diversity and lead to unforeseen and unwelcome societal transformations.
Dr. Hansen, you've raised several important points, particularly concerning social stratification. However, the history of technology often shows an initial phase of limited access, followed by broader democratization. Consider computers, mobile phones, or even automobiles. Once luxuries for the few, they are now ubiquitous. I believe that with thoughtful policy and perhaps even public investment, we can strive for equitable access to the benefits of genetic technologies, rather than preemptively blocking them based on initial cost concerns. Regarding the, quote, slippery slope, this is a concern voiced with nearly every significant technological leap. Yet, we don't ban cars because they could be driven recklessly. Nor do we prohibit surgery because it can be misused. Instead, we establish laws, ethical guidelines, and regulatory bodies, such as the FDA for medical treatments. Stringent oversight, informed public discourse, and adaptive regulations are the appropriate tools to navigate these complexities, not outright prohibition. The fear of dystopian outcomes should not paralyze our progress when mechanisms exist to guide development responsibly. You also question the idea of it devaluing natural variation. I would argue the opposite. By allowing individuals more choice in their appearance, should they desire it and it be safe, we are, in fact, expanding the palette of human diversity, not contracting it. It's about adding possibilities, not subtracting them. Provided safety is paramount and consent is informed, the locus of control for decisions primarily affecting an individual's body and self-perception should reside with that individual. We must trust people's capacity to make responsible choices for themselves when empowered with knowledge and options.
Professor Carter, your faith in regulation and the eventual democratization of technology is optimistic, but I fear it may not fully account for the unique nature of genetic modification, especially in a globalized context. How effective can national regulations truly be when, quote, genetic tourism to permissive jurisdictions could easily become a reality for the affluent, bypassing domestic safeguards and exacerbating global inequalities? This isn't like a mobile phone. These are alterations to the fundamental building blocks of life, potentially heritable, and the market forces driving them could be immense. This leads to my concern about the commodification of human traits. If we can select and pay for specific genetic attributes, do these attributes then become market commodities? Will children be designed to fit parental desires or perceived societal advantages, turning procreation into another form of consumerism? Furthermore, your comparison with existing cosmetic practices, such as surgery, overlooks a critical distinction. While surgery modifies an individual's phenotype, cosmetic genetic engineering, particularly if it touches the germline, alters the genotype in ways that can be passed down through generations. The ethical gravity and potential for unforeseen, widespread biological consequences are of an entirely different magnitude. And while you champion the pursuit of self-esteem, I must reiterate that focusing on genetic modification as a solution deflects from the more challenging but essential work of tackling systemic issues like discrimination, media pressures, and the societal structures that actively undermine people's self-worth based on their natural appearance. Are we truly enhancing well-being, or are we merely offering a high-tech distraction from deeper societal maladies?
Thank you both for those compelling rebuttals. Let's delve deeper. Professor Carter, Dr. Hansen raises a pertinent point about the definition of, quote, enhancement. Who should ultimately decide what constitutes a desirable trait for cosmetic genetic engineering? And how do we prevent this leading to a homogenization of human appearance, or, worse, the reinforcement of potentially harmful, narrow beauty standards?
That's a crucial question, Dr. Hayes. The definition of desirable in a cosmetic context should, as much as ethically possible, reside with the individual making the informed choice for themselves. It's not for a central authority to dictate aesthetic ideals. However, societal dialogue is essential. Professional bodies, ethicists, and public representatives should collaborate to establish clear boundaries, particularly to prevent the engineering of traits that could be harmful or socially divisive, or that reinforce discrimination. The goal isn't homogenization, but responsible expansion of choice.
Dr. Hansen, your response to that?
While individual choice sounds appealing, Professor, the, quote, desirable is often socially constructed. If prevailing media and societal pressures already promote a narrow range of beauty ideals, won't individual choices inevitably gravitate towards those, leading to de facto homogenization, even without a central diktat? The power of social norms is immense.
An important counterpoint. Dr. Hansen, Professor Carter argues strongly for individual autonomy. If an adult, fully informed of all discernible risks and potential benefits, wishes to undergo a demonstrably safe cosmetic genetic procedure, on what grounds should society deny them that choice, especially if it doesn't appear to cause direct, immediate harm to others?
The concept of harm here needs to be broadened beyond direct physical injury to others. Society has a legitimate interest in preventing harms, such as the exacerbation of inequality, the erosion of social cohesion, and the potential devaluing of natural human variation. Individual autonomy is not absolute. It is always balanced against collective well-being. If the pursuit of such individual choices, in aggregate, leads to a society where genetic status dictates worth, or where immense pressure is placed on individuals to conform to engineered ideals, then that constitutes a significant societal harm that justifies regulatory limitation, even intervention.
Professor Carter, your thoughts on that broader definition of harm?
I acknowledge that societal implications are critical. However, the potential for aggregate harm must be weighed against the tangible benefits to individual well-being and liberty. A truly informed consent process must include discussion of these societal considerations. Moreover, proactive measures like promoting diverse beauty standards and ensuring equitable access can mitigate many of these societal harms, rather than resorting to outright bans on personal choices that are made responsibly.
Let's shift to safety. Professor Carter, considering the potential for unforeseen long-term ecological or evolutionary consequences of altering the human gene pool, however remote, particularly if germline modifications for cosmetic traits were ever contemplated, how can we adequately assess the true long-term safety?
This is undeniably one of the most serious considerations, particularly with germline editing. For somatic, non-heritable cosmetic gene therapy, the risks are primarily confined to the individual, and assessment protocols can be rigorous, similar to other advanced medical treatments, involving extensive preclinical research and phased clinical trials. For germline modification, the bar would have to be extraordinarily high. We would need decades of research, multi-generational studies in animal models, and a profound societal consensus before even contemplating such a step for non-therapeutic reasons. The, quote, precautionary principle would apply with immense force here. For now, I believe the ethical discussion should focus primarily on somatic applications for consenting adults.
Dr. Hansen, if cosmetic genetic engineering could demonstrably and safely alleviate significant, persistent psychological distress for individuals, perhaps those with severe disfigurements not currently classifiable as medical, but for whom genetic intervention becomes a viable option, would your ethical stance shift or at least become more nuanced?
That presents a challenging scenario, and one where the line between therapeutic and cosmetic blurs considerably. If a condition causes profound, documented psychological suffering, and genetic intervention is the safest and most effective means to alleviate that suffering. The ethical calculus does indeed become more nuanced. However, even in such cases, we must be exceptionally cautious. Who defines, quote, significant psychological distress, and how do we prevent this becoming a backdoor to widespread cosmetic enhancement under a quasi-medical pretext? The potential for medicalizing normal human variation or dissatisfaction is considerable. Strict, independent oversight would be absolutely paramount.
In closing, I want to reiterate that the pursuit of well-being through technological means, including the responsible use of cosmetic genetic engineering, aligns with our fundamental human drive for self-improvement and autonomy. The potential for individuals to alleviate distress, enhance self-esteem, and exercise greater control over their personal attributes when conducted safely and ethically is a prospect we should not dismiss out of fear. The ethical challenges, as Dr. Hansen has rightly highlighted, are substantial. They demand our utmost attention, rigorous debate, and the development of robust, adaptive regulatory frameworks. But these are challenges to be met with diligence and wisdom, not with outright prohibition. History teaches us that human progress often involves navigating uncharted waters. With careful oversight, ongoing public dialogue, and a commitment to responsible innovation, I believe cosmetic genetic engineering can, in time, contribute positively to human life, offering new avenues for personal fulfillment. Let us embrace the future with cautious optimism, prepared to manage the risks, rather than recoiling from progress due to fear of the unknown. The key is responsible stewardship of these powerful new capabilities.
As we conclude, I urge us to reflect deeply on the path Professor Carter advocates. While the allure of individual enhancement is undeniable, the potential societal costs of widespread cosmetic genetic engineering are, in my view, unacceptably high. My primary concerns remain the very real risk of entrenching new forms of social injustice, the commodification of human life where traits become purchasable assets, the devaluation of natural, inherent human diversity, and the hubris of attempting to, quote, perfect ourselves based on fleeting societal standards. The pursuit of cosmetic genetic perfection, I fear, could well distract us from more pressing social and ethical priorities, from tackling poverty and discrimination to fostering genuine self-acceptance and celebrating the rich tapestry of human variation as it naturally occurs. A world where we invest enormous resources in altering appearances while neglecting fundamental human needs would be a poorer world, not an enhanced one. Therefore, I advocate for a profoundly precautionary approach. We must prioritize collective well-being, social equity, and robust ethical considerations over individual desires for cosmetic enhancement, especially when the ramifications for humanity's future are so profound and potentially irreversible. Let us engage in a much deeper societal reflection on what it truly means to be human, and what values we wish to embody and pass on, before we irrevocably alter the human blueprint for reasons of mere appearance.
Thank you, Professor Carter, and thank you, Dr. Hansen, for your exceptionally insightful and thought-provoking contributions to this incredibly complex and important discussion. You've both articulated your positions with clarity and conviction. Tonight, we've explored the profound tension between the promise of individual empowerment and enhancement through biotechnology and the significant societal, ethical, and philosophical considerations that such capabilities entail. The questions raised about autonomy, justice, the definition of normal or desirable, and the very essence of human identity will undoubtedly continue to resonate as science progresses. There are clearly no easy answers, but open, informed debate such as this is crucial for navigating the path ahead responsibly. I encourage our audience to continue reflecting on these critical issues. Thank you for joining